Welcome to week 2. This week, we're going to start talking about how we can look at sustainability and apply it to systems or how we're looking at the world. So, this week is called Systems and Systems Thinking and Sustainability. And I want to go through a little bit about what systems thinking is all about because it is a difficult time or different concept for a lot of people. I remember being in a class on systems thinking with a bunch of bankers and having all of them not understand it in the slightest. Well, to me, it came naturally. Now, I come from a background of science, biology specifically, and looking at nature and how nature works. And nature works in terms of systems. And let me explain what I mean by systems. It means that it looks more at the circular way that the world works rather than a linear way of. We look at a linear way, it's more like birth, living, death. And when we look at a circular way of looking at the world, we look at birth, living, death, and how death comes back and becomes a part of life again. So that's more the circular view of environmentalism. Now, when your sort of lecture notes kind of start talking about a pizza, and I kind of understood what they were talking about the pizza, but I want to take that pizza idea to a step further. If you look at creating a pizza, what you're looking at is all the different components of a pizza and how they all come together under the optimal conditions of a great pizza oven in order to create that delicious thing we call pizza. So that's taking all of those different parts and pulling them together. But with systems thinking, it takes it to another level, which might get a little gross, which is how to take all those things where we take the tomatoes out of the ground from that good soil. We take the wheat out of the ground from that good soil to make the crust. And we also have animals that live and create milk, which creates a cheese, which creates that pizza. And all those things together come into that pizza. The difference with real systems thinking is it then takes it to the next level of saying, now that you've eaten the pizza, how do you return all those nutrients and all the energy back into the ground? AKA through going to the bathroom and putting that soil or that back into the soil in order to grow the next crop. Now, I do not recommend that you actually poop on your lawn to create the pizza, but you kind of get the idea about how nature kind of brings that back around. If you look at nature, nature's always looking at that circle. It's always looking at how one individual's waste is another one's food. Or if you look at just say the carbon dioxide oxygen cycle, how we as humans exhale carbon dioxide and plants take in that carbon dioxide and create oxygen, and therefore our waste becomes their needed thing. So that's what we kind of really look at with systems thinking. Now, we do want to actually look at how systems thinking works with everything, and we look into the ecological. I mentioned how ecology or nature actually does that cycle, but we also have to look into a cultural system, how humans, what they do has to affect the next generation and their children. Because if they don't do that, then we don't have a culture that actually continues. So that's what we're trying to look at. Or societal. If society has a way of just creating waste and not creating a benefit, then that society will collapse. And we've seen societies and cultural systems collapse because they didn't keep within that cycle. The same with healthcare, government, legal or judicial, or even those bankers who had such a tough, difficult time. Like, listen, if you spend all of your money and one day you've got nothing to spend the next day, you have to figure out a way to continue earning so that you can continue to go on. So that's how we start looking about sustainable practices, how to make sure that everything we do allows us to continue on into the future. Now, if we look at cultural systems, we have a lot of cultures that have a great job of actually following this, but we have a lot of cultures that have also done a worse job of wasting things and not giving back and not having that come back into, again, the next generation. And that's where we really kind of see humans breaking this down. Um, and we have to look at all those connections. Now, one thing we have to take into consideration is all those different factors that I talked about, the environment, culture, government, all of these things, they're all part of the same thing. You can't just say, I'm just going to look at the culture and not look at the government because they're interconnected. And that's where we really want to talk about the holistic or the whole view of the world, how a economic decision can affect a political decision, can affect a cultural decision, can affect an environmental decision. And all of these are working together, and what makes it really confusing to see how anything is working together at all, to be completely honest. So let's look at how all of those work together. We also have to look at how we're not doing a great job. And they bring in the idea of the Matrix, which is a fabulous film if you haven't seen it. And great with ethics teachers. They love having the Matrix because it looks at um, waking up to seeing what's going on with the world. Are we really doing the right things? And Agent Smith even talks about how he looked at humans and realized that when you look at all their species somehow managed to give back. They somehow managed to give back to the environment and live in balance with the environment where they don't overgrow. Other species, if there's too many of them, they die off. They live in what you might have remembered from an environmental science class, the S curve, where it's like they go up and down a little bit, but they always stay somewhat in balance. Human beings don't. We keep reproducing, and as a result, what we're doing is we're knocking the ecosystem out of balance. We're killing off species, we're killing off our own chances of surviving in the future. We're ruining our air. We're overcrowding our cities. We're overplanting. We're overfishing. We're overdoing everything, which is really affecting our chances for survival in the future. And that's why it's so important to take a look at this now. We see what's going on with climate change because of the change we've done. And it's really time to start waking up and realizing that while we've always thought we were above nature, we're still a part of nature, and we need to find our ways to actually come back into balance with nature. Um, and that kind of brings in this ego versus eco, which is, are we looking at just the ego or just ourselves? Or are we looking at ecology of our place within the world and how we have those balances? So we do still have that disconnect. We do still have people who think of themselves as not part of nature, but we really have to understand that we really do have that part of nature within us. We still need that clean air. We still need nature to grow us our food. If we continue to just pile up our waste and not return our waste back to the earth like everything else in nature, we're going to start finding that we can't survive either. And that's really what we need to look at when we talk about, again, this systems thinking and look at sustainability. We need to look at the end product. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's something that's actually called cradle to cradle rather than cradle to grave. Right now, we have very cradle to grave thinking, which is we're born, we live, we die. What we need to think about is cradle to cradle, which is everything. When it's lost its usefulness, how can that be used to give back into the next level so that we can continue using the earth and continue living with the earth, but having something continue for a long period of time? And I hope you enjoy learning about this experience and figuring out how this can fit within your own life, within your own community, how little changes you can make big changes in the world and in your community and in the health of all of us. And I hope you really enjoy.